from Tunisia, Romania, Morocco, Albania, or Ukraine. For many, the school is their primary connection to the community. We've also implemented successful educational actions and MHPSS approaches at Avi Motesplatz, an after-school meeting center in Moldan, in Sweden, catering to children and families with migrant backgrounds. These families include recently arrived refugees in the Middle East and North African region, long-term residents in Sweden, and even families originally from Ukraine but with Syrian roots. Our collaborative efforts have also extended to a primary school in Dublin or in 3 reception centers in Catalonia. You will hear more stories in what follows. We're also thrilled to first launch the Refugee Brokering Knowledge Platform. We envision that is a valuable resource, enabling us to learn more from our evidence-based model with multiple resources ready to be used, draw inspiration from our pilot experiences, and engage in vivid discussions within our community section. The platform represents our commitment to ensure the sustainability of the refugee project and the replicability, not only in Europe, but also beyond its borders, as we are already in conversations to expand it to the Arabic world, starting for North Syria. Over the past years, until unfortunately today, we have witnessed several significant humanitarian crises that continue to compel many people to leave their homes and seek refuge in Europe. Through our research, we can demonstrate to policymakers that there are actionable measures to safeguard the right of education and the well-being of all children. I'm hopeful that by the end of this evening, informed by solid research, evidence, and after listening to those taking action on the ground, we can light up a spark of optimism, firmly believing that our combined efforts can really make a difference in many migrant and refugee children in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Fernando López Aguilar, the European parliamentary that is hosting this session, and in addition, our project officer, Ángel Fuentes, that has facilitated everything in this difficult project. Well, IMMERSE project is devoted to, finally devoted to the integration of migrant, to enhance integration of migrant and refugee children through the development of a set of 30 indicators. Through the development of a set of 30 indicators, that is our main product. In addition, we have developed this. I think the most value-added, the most value-added source of this project has been the co-creative process that has accompanied this the development of the indicators. And finally, of course, our main aim is that we develop a set of policy recommendations in order to permeate the European society, and not only the countries, the 6 countries that are, have participated in this project. We will tell you afterwards in the roundtable the main results of this project, so I'm not going to make a spoiler now. But I would like just to share with you that the most important challenge that we have faced was just to take data, to collect data for 24,000 children in the pandemics. So we will share with you now in a few minutes in the roundtable how we could manage to do it in not only informal but in informal educational environments. So just hope it's worthwhile, the forthcoming session. Thank you very much.
So we are now moving on to the first roundtable of the conference, titled The Socio-Educational Integration of Migrant and Refugee Children in Europe, Evidence from the IMMERSE Project. Dr. Mercedes Fernandez will be conducting this roundtable. Speakers, please join us at the table.
Shall we have the presentations? Well, okay. Well, welcome to this first panel about the IMMERSE project. The title of this panel is the socio-educational integration of migrant refugee children in Europe, evidence from the IMMERSE project. Then this roundtable is split into 5 interventions. First one will deal about the IMMERSE project. The presentation is a general overview of the IMMERSE project. Might be, you can please put the next slide. Yeah. Yes. No? Yes. This is, okay. So, yes, thank you. Then, as commented, we will offer an overview of the IMMERSE project, and then my colleague Inma Serrano, that is on my left hand side, will offer the main results of the dashboard, as I commented, the dashboard of indicators. And then my colleague Daniela Maruda will present from Pantheon University, will present the qualitative part of our project dealing with refugee and asylum seeker children in difficult environments. And finally, another of our colleagues from Save the Children Italy will present the good practices and policies. May I just read a short bios of my colleagues. Isabel Muñoz San Roque, that is going to present with me the overview of the project, studied educational sciences at the Complutense University of Madrid, where she graduated in 1994. Then she began in 1996 teaching at the Faculty of Human and Social Sciences at Comillas Pontifical University, where she has taught subjects on research methods, statistics applied to social science and education innovation, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. She received her doctorate in pedagogy in 2002 from Comillas Pontifical University, and she is currently a full professor and a senior researcher, well, I must say co-IP, co-principal investigator of IMMERSE. And in addition, we are also co-leading with another colleague the Let's Care Horizon project as well. Inmaculada Serrano, she holds a PhD on political science from the Autonomous University of Madrid, an MA in social sciences from the Juan March Institute, and a BA in sociology from Salamanca University. She has her research focuses on international and forced migration, and she has worked as a researcher in several international projects at the Pompeu Fabra University, Carlos III University, and the Spanish National Research Council, the SIC, as well as with international organizations, including the UNHCR and the Fundamental Rights Agency. She is the research coordinator of the IMMERSE project. As for my colleague, Maria Maruda, she is professor of international law and human rights at Pantheon University, holds a Jean Monnet chair in EU solidarity and civil protection, humanitarian action, and special focus on asylum and migration. She is president of the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance, Council of Europe, and the academic coordinator of IMMERSE in Pantheon University. And finally, Ms. Michela Leonardi holds a master's degree in human rights and multi-level governance from the University of Padua and works as policy support at Save the Children Italy. She coordinates research activities on inclusion, poverty, education, and child labor, and formulates policies for the fulfillment of children and youth's fundamental rights. She is policy officer for IMMERSE and coordinated the development of the national and EU level recommendation papers. Okay. Now, we are going, Isabel and me, are going to present the overview for the IMMERSE project. Please, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. No, the prior one, please. This one, okay. Okay, so IMMERSE is a Horizon 2020 funded project that is aimed at the mapping and the integration of refugee and migrant migrant children, of migrant refugee children. Could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. Well,
Okay.
yes.
We are 11 partners from 6 different countries, including 3 universities. Comillas University in Spain, UCC in Ireland, and Pantheon University in Greece. 2 public administrations with competencies in migration and education. They are located in Spain and Greece. 3 NGOs dedicated to the defense of children's rights, located in Belgium, in Italy, and Germany. And 2 companies with expertise in social innovation and stakeholder participation, located in Spain too, Zabala and Infodev. And finally, 1 technology company specialized in digital transformation. It's called Inetum.
Okay, thank you. Could you please go to the next slide? The project is, thank you. The project, you can just put it all together because I think it's going to be much better. Well, the project is split into 4 phases. The first phase dealt with the dashboard of indicators, that is one of our main products, as commented before. And we were able to develop a set of 30 indicators on the inclusion of migrant and refugee children. Then in the second phase had to do with the ICT Think. So we produced a digital platform and the IMMERSE Hub. We have dealt with a huge database on good practices, and then we also developed a data collection on an online data collection application. Then in phase number 3, it was the data, the quantitative data the quantitative and qualitative data collection part of the project. So we have to deal with 24,000 children in Europe, 60% of them of migrant origin. And then we also conducted qualitative research through case studies in refugee reception centers and with another centers with hosted unaccompanied minors. And finally, the fourth phase has to do with the policy implication of the project. So they are under construction now, but we are producing a set of recommendations for the inclusion of migrant and refugee children, and we have also identified good practices that are included in the hub. Next slide, please.
Okay. The data collection has been done in the 6 countries, in Belgium, Ireland, Greece, Italy, Germany, and Spain, in 406 schools and non-formal educational institutions. And the questionnaire is translated in 12 languages, 7 of the consortium and 5 extra, like Arabic, Chinese, Persian, Romanian, and Urdu. There are 4 groups of participants: children between 7 and 18 years old, their parents, school principals of schools, and teachers. In this data collection, we have collected a total of 24,000 children. A total of about 14,000 are migrant and refugee children.
Okay, thank you. Could you please? Thank you. Well, in this chart, you can see some information about the panel of panel of 30 indicators. Then we have split this panel. This panel is split into 2 types of indicators. The one in your left hand that have to do with the integration of migrant children, and the other one with the context that is the barriers and the facilitators that these children face when coming to integration. Then, as for the integration part, you can see 5 circles. We have divided the integration in 5 domains. The lilac ones are those that we have fulfilled with primary data, so through the data collection or that data collections, qualitative and quantitative, and the green ones come from secondary sources. So the 5 domains of integration have to do with the access to rights, so to academic achievement, well-being, language and culture, and finally, social networks. And as for the contextual part of the migrant children integration, that are the integration barriers and facilitators. Also, the lilac part are extracted from the primary data sources, and the other ones from the currently existing indicators. Well, somehow transformed, of course. So we have divided these barriers and facilitators into 6 parts that have to do with the school organization and teachers, the learning support that is provided at school, the existence of mental health services, the negative attitudes that these children could face, then the political leadership and the school segregation. Go to the next step, next slide, sorry.
Okay, the IMMERSE Hub is in the IMMERSE project website. It's an online community providing a common space to share experiences, ideas and concerns, and to access relevant information and educational resources. It is addressed to professionals in educational and social fields and stakeholders interested in socio-educational integration. The access need registration. The online digital database.
You could please go to the next slide. Thank you.
Yes. It's a collection of more than 100 resources, including good practices, projects, policies, pedagogical tools, and is addressed to professionals in educational and migrant sectors and policymakers.
Okay.
It's free to access, and it is available in 7 languages.
And finally, the policy recommendations. We have a policy recommendation report at the national level for each country, and an additional policy recommendation document at the European level. Both of them, the national and the European level reports are currently under construction. Anyway, we have also produced 3 monographs that deal, as you can see in the slide, with the integration in general for the migrant refugee children. We issued a special policy paper on the COVID disease and migration. And finally, another one dealing with unaccompanied minors. And then we have celebrated, you can go to the next slide, please. We can celebrate, because I'm running out of time. We have just give you a hint on the national events that took place in the different countries that were quite successful, I dare say. And then that would be all for my part for the overview of this. And without dilation, because we are running out of time, then I am going to give the floor to my colleague Inma Serrano, that is going to present together with our colleagues from Spain, I think they are going to connect remotely? Okay, then they are going to present the main findings of the research, the IMMERSE project. Thank you very much, Inma.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure, a real honor to present for the first time, to unveil the results of this very ambitious project. Many times we have thought maybe it was overly ambitious, particularly when we were faced with the pandemics, to be able to carry it out. I want to emphasize that there are two important parts to what I'm going to present right now, which is first the definition of the 30 indicators that Mercedes has already introduced. Julie, if you can go to the next slide. The first part is the added value of what we are going to present is that for the first time we have an instrument now that that allows us to compare cross-nationally the integration results of children in Europe. This did not exist before. The data did not exist before either, but we were first in an initial phase of defining what did we have to look for, in which things did we have to pay, which things did we have to pay attention to understand better, and to monitor and to be able to monitor and assess integration and policy and programs addressing integration. We did not do this as a group of researchers. We did this from the very beginning, engaging in a very robust process of co-creation with the children themselves, migrant children of very different backgrounds and ages, their parents, their school communities, their educational communities, their families, the NGOs, and the policymakers. Together with them, we first defined the parameters, and Mercedes has already shown, like, we have the integration dimensions, then we have the barriers and facilitators. We also defined with them, validated in a process of iteration, different consultations at different levels, at different points, the variables. What did we have to look for? And how did we measure that? How can we do that and do that in a way that is relevant for the children, that is relevant for the teachers, that is relevant for the policymakers? And then we went out there and tried to get the data. We tried and prioritized to obtain already available data and information, but as probably most of the people in this room are already aware, this data is very rare to find, it's very scarce, there are a lot of data gaps there. So we had to go out there to gather the data that was not existing, that was required, and this is mostly the data that had to be asked directly from the children and from the teachers and the schools. And this was the greatest challenge that we faced doing this data collection in the middle of the pandemics across Europe. So we did all of this for the 6 IMMERSE countries because we had to start somewhere, but the vocation is to be for this instrument to become pan-European and to become stable in time so that we could repeat this ideally and to obtain the information that we are going to be seeing now next. So what I'm going to present now in the next slides is the results of the dashboard of indicators, putting together the information that we have on the 2 types of results, so the integration results, barriers and facilitators, and this refers basically to what we call the micro level. So integration results are results from the children themselves, what is going on with the children. And the barriers and facilitators, the context that Mercedes was referring to, refers to the meso level, the schools, the neighborhoods, what's going on in the neighborhoods and the schools, and the macro level, basically policy. But not only, also what are the attitudes in society towards these children, and this hugely impacts them. So we have 14 and 16 of these indicators. Julia, thank you. We have collected secondary sources mostly from Eurostat, from MIPEX, the Migrant Integration Policy Index, PISA, the European Survey on Income and Living Conditions, and also Eurydice. But then, as I already mentioned, we had to go to collect information from the children and the schools themselves to complete the 30 indicators. Thank you, Julia. So I'm going to present first the integration results, and as mentioned already, we have 5 different dimensions. I'm going to present several of them separately. So what you see here is 2 of these dimensions: access to rights, where we have the scholarization results of children. Are they scholarized? If they are in compulsory ages in each of the countries, we have adjusted this. And as you can see, the results are quite good for all countries, with worse of results in the case of Greece and to some extent in Germany as well. And in the case of healthcare needs, whether they are met or not, for which we use EU SILC data, the results are also very good. So in terms of access to basic rights, this is the percentage of children based on the secondary sources that we have consulted for this, of migrant background children that are either scholarized or who have had some medical needs in the last year, and these have been met. So for this very basic standard, basically the results across the 6 countries are relatively good. Things look a little bit different when looking into educational achievements. We have got this information on low achievers, or not being a low achiever, or not being an early leaver from education, from secondary sources as well, from PISA 2019, and from Eurostat, the most recent data from last year. And as you can see, in terms of educational achievements, that's when results across the board start to be a little bit less good, particularly in terms of academic skills as documented in PISA. Next slide, Julia. These are the next 3 dimensions that we have seen for the integration results. And these are all data collected directly from the IMMERSE survey. So over 30,000 migrant background children are reflected here across the 6 countries. And we again are seeing the percentage of children, migrant background children, that have positive results in all of these indicators. So the first result that hits probably that hits us back with a hint of optimism is happiness, which is one of the best general results we have across the board. Of course, this tells us also something about our population. These are children. They are optimists. They are resilient. If you start to go to dig a little bit deeper, things start looking not so good, particularly, for instance, if you look into belonging, the sense of belonging at school, which is a very basic and very related dimension. The results are definitely not as good. You see a lot of yellows and a lot of reds there as well. In terms of language competence, in the first dimension, there is a lot of variation that has to do, for instance, in Spain is doing very well there, but we have a lot of Spanish speakers migrant population. Whereas in the case of Greece, where the worst results are, there is a different alphabet, there are specific barriers that have to do with the language itself and with the social context. And the other indicator on intercultural ties is a very interesting one that we came up with, trying to follow the intercultural paradigm. In following this intercultural paradigm, the ideal is that migrant children are able to maintain their cultural identities, while at the same time they can incorporate new ones, new values, intercultural competencies, and so on. So what this percentage measures is children who maintain that identity, but at the same time identify with either other categories, geographical, cultural, that are not related to their origins, or more transversal, like people of my age, people of my gender. So the results are relatively good in the sense that they are, in some countries, they are almost close to half. Almost another half are children who identify with their context of destination, where they are, or with other categories, but who do not identify with their origin, which has been something that has surprised us quite a lot. So the end that we need to keep improving in this intercultural paradigm is for migrant children to be able to feel comfortable and to maintain their cultural identities as well. The final dimension, which has to do with social connections, reflects both whether children feel they have support from their friends and from their teachers, and whether they trust institutions. The best news here is that trust in institutions is quite high. It's lower for migrant children, which I will refer briefly later on, how this compares to native children across the board. And we have some very positive results in terms of the support that children feel they have from teachers, which we have found, and I think this is a common finding also with refugee-ED, that this is key, not only the school environment, but particularly also the teachers and the support that they feel they receive from them. And there is a lot of variation here, with some countries having more room for improvement than others. And finally, one very interesting finding as well is the one that has to do with whether friends are diverse or not. Whether they have friends from different countries, from different origins. And again, we find mixed results in the sense that this is around half of the children that say they have many of these friends, but still it's very remarkable that migrant background children are much more likely to say so than native children. So this is also a very important nuance finding that we have come across to keep working at. Julia, you can go on. So this is just to give you a hint of how putting together all of these indicators gives us a comparative perspective of where are the areas of improvement across the board. We start with Spain because it's the country with the largest number of top scores across the indicators. So it's the country with the best results in terms of integration results at the child level. If you can go ahead, Julia. And to the next one, here you have the south of Europe, and basically, sorry. Italy has a very similar pattern, only with worse results in social aspects that have to do with the support they receive from children, from other children, and from their teachers. Whereas Greece has worse results in a few other indicators. Julia, you can go ahead. So here we have the comparison with the north of Europe, Spain as a baseline always as the country with the best results. And again, there are a few dimensions there that there are room for improvement, but what Germany and other northern countries have in common is also better results in the intercultural ties and in the diversity of friends, which probably has to do a lot with the migration history of these countries. Here is Belgium, which also improves the results of Germany, and finally Ireland, improves. It's the Northern European country with the best results and the second overall among the 6 IMMERSE countries. If we can go ahead. So more briefly, here we are going to see overall putting together all these barriers and facilitators organized by Julia. These are the macro level indicators. Sorry, the next slide. And as you can see, these are all extracted from MIPEX. That's the Migrant Integration Policy Index. So they have, these are indicators that were already available, but that provide us with an overview in terms of what is the policy status in these very relevant indicators and dimensions, specifically for children. So we have access to superior legal statuses, citizenship, or permanent residence, where we have countries that do better in one or the other. Access to education, whether this is a legal right throughout all levels of education, up to university, and whether there is support for children, migrant children, to engage in university. And how are we doing that? 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so I have to speed up a little bit. There are other, as you can see, other dimensions. The one where all of the countries do particularly well is in that in all countries we find that there are recommendations or a requirement or funding for specific measures to support language and learning from children who have just arrived and who are in particular need of these measures. If you can go, Julia, to the next one. This is the meso level, so this is the schools and the neighborhoods. We have asked the schools and the children about all of these things. So about the schools, whether the intercultural values are relevant or part of their identity and relevant for them or not, whether this is part of the intercultural values are part of the syllabus, and whether or not how they promote the participation of parents in a way that is adapted to the needs of the parents of the migrant children, so in terms of language and so on. So as you can see, there is a lot of variation across the board. In terms of measures for learning support, children have told us whether they have these services or not, and schools have told us whether they have or not mental health services at the schools, which we have found to be crucial in also, again, in common with refugee-ed. And as you can see, this is probably if the one thing across the board, at the meso level that needs the most addressing. We are in a huge need for improving how we do in catering to the mental health needs of these kids, of all kids actually, but here the percentage is for the migrant background, for the schools, no, sorry, this is for the schools generally. So this affects all children. And just very quickly, just to see what I can say very quickly about the next ones. This is the good news, negative attitude. So things that are measured at different levels. There's a lot of green over there, but just to go very quickly to just give you just the overview of the countries. Here it is. There's a lot of variation. So barriers and facilitators, what is done at the policy and the meso level, each country has its own model, and we need to improve different things in different countries in most cases. And I will stop here.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to stop here because Mr. Juan Fernando López Aguilar, the member of the European Parliament, is going to speak just now, no? So I think we are interrupting the panel, and then might be we can continue afterwards with the remaining interventions. Anyway, thank you very much. Well, so I'm giving the floor, 20 minutes.
So I have 8 minutes.
You have 8 minutes, okay. So Daniela is going now to analyze in 8 minutes how we have dealt with migrant children in difficult environments. That's it. Okay.
So I don't know if there is the presentation. Yes. So it's qualitative insights. You have seen the quantitative part, the data collection, and we soon realized already around 2021 that we needed a qualitative part because certain types of children, categories of children, unaccompanied ones, newcomers, aging out, as Ireland calls them, from education, certain categories are underrepresented. And we didn't want them to be invisible in our research. So in this way, each partner had to choose at least 2 areas of difficult access, qualitative research, focus groups, interviews, semi-structured ones, both with children and experts or caregivers in unaccompanied minors shelters, for example, in refugee camps, sometimes in remote areas where they didn't have access to school. And therefore, this was the qualitative part of our research. And somehow, we also managed to combine this with quantitative aspects as well. So unaccompanied minors from their shelters could also complete part of the survey. So we kind of compared then qualitative insights plus quantitative from unaccompanied minors, because there was no other way to really know which of the refugee children, unaccompanied minor children in schools were indeed without families, etc. So we accessed shelters to capture underrepresented groups, children's experiences, through qualitative case studies. In 6 countries, 13 case studies with 91 child and youth participants. And now you will see from the different deliverables and the publications that will soon come out that we are talking mainly of unaccompanied children and newly arrived migrant children or other children in vulnerable situations from 9 to 21 years old. Now, the research is for education and it would normally be until 18, but since a number of children arrive and they take part in classes of lower, let's say, level, at times we would find in classrooms, in NGOs, premises, in camps, in shelters, children above the age of 18. Experts, caregivers, social workers were also interviewed, and the analysis includes the same indicators that were presented. Next slide, Julia. You will see part of the quantitative let's say, aspect and then compare it. When it comes to language and cultural dimensions, so how for example, unaccompanied minors feel their language capacity is, what is the level. We will see that in all the results, we have 10% or even 15% lower than the general sample. So when they don't have the support of the family, this is much more difficult for them on language support. And you see how it shows for the specific category in this slide of unaccompanied minors. We were about 460 in Greece, 286 in Spain. So we do have an important sample. Level of language competencies connected to a feeling of self-confidence. Therefore, qualitative research outcomes, at least on unaccompanied minors and other refugee children in non-formal education, plus their survey results, should guide our support systems, whether in schools or non-formal settings. And also, the second aspect was the cultural dimension, so how close they feel to their country of origin. It was strange for us to see that they didn't feel as close to their country of origin as one would have expected. So are we maybe following assimilation policies? This was a big question mark. Next slide. Or should we be doing more on intercultural or multicultural education in schools? So this is something that came up when it comes to unaccompanied minors, and it's important to connect it, to compare it to the general sample, and especially how teachers and school principals feel differently when it comes to multiculturalism and how schools are supported in this. So this was a very interesting aspect, since 40% of unaccompanied minors feel closer to people from their country of origin and 40% closer to host countries. So this is where we stand, and in several countries it's Julia. Now, the sense of belonging, again, 10% worse in relation to the general sample. And there is an importance of understanding the coping mechanism, of course, also of unaccompanied minors. Can we move maybe to the last slide, because it's important to see this one, because the overview is more or less the same. There we are. So when it comes to unaccompanied minors and refugee children in our quality research, we see that school is very much an essential experience of childhood, especially for children that don't have this. They are still in camps in difficult environments, and it's paramount for creating a sense of belonging and of providing opportunities to develop and improve both language skills, but also find future employment. Education is central in building friendships with peers and in strengthening their well-being and sense of belonging. Family is crucial. That's why we see the worsening, let's say, levels in almost all our research. And when absent, especially for unaccompanied minors, support schemes need to be holistic, not just on language, but also concerning their own identity and stability. Unaccompanied minors and children under international protection, when enrolled in schools, feel unsatisfied if their previous school experience is not assessed. We have no ways of assessing that. And it's even worse when they are enrolled in schools and they are unable to achieve school performance if they lack previous school experience. Some of them could not read and write, and they were already 12, 13, 14. And finally, the legal uncertainty, if they have no documentation, if 80 or 85% of asylum applications is rejected, other barriers in family reunification creates even more insecurity, a sense of absolute despair. They have no incentive for attending schools, and we have higher school dropout rates.
Thank you very much, Maria. I think we are in time, so we are now leaving the table, and then maybe we can come afterwards. The intervention of Mr. Juan Fernando López Aguilar.
So thank you very much to our colleagues, and we can take like a couple of minutes to the coffee break until our guest is here. So, yes, please, let's move back to our seats. Yes, it's the way we... Thank you very much. We are about to start again, please. We have now the honor of having with us the member of the European Parliament, Mr. Juan Fernando López Aguilar.
Muy bien, pues, so good afternoon. Juan Fernando López Aguilar is originally from Las Palmas de Gran Canaria, and he has a remarkable academic background, which is relevant for the forum today. Since 2009, López Aguilar has been a member of the European Parliament and a member of the group of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats, and he currently holds the position of President of the Committee on Liberties, Justice and the Interior at the European Parliament, what makes even more sense that he's with us this afternoon. López Aguilar's contributions to Spanish politics are also significant. He was the Minister of Justice in Spain from 2004 and 2007 during the government of President Rodríguez Zapatero. And notably, López Aguilar's deep concern for migration and refugee issues is reflected in his pivotal role in advancing the new Pact on Migration and Asylum for the European Union that he's going to be talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. My pleasure. Welcome to the European Parliament. It's my privilege. Research project. I'm impressed and moved because it takes certainly research, but it takes a lot of explanation, reaching out to the public, which is, if I may say, the hardest challenge we face here in the European Parliament. You know that you are in the premises of the European Parliament in Brussels. This is a unique institution. This is the only one directly elected institution in the European architecture. We are here by the universal suffrage of nothing less than 450 million European citizens. Among them, many of you, I assure. And this House has no democratic deficit at all. This is a lawmaking body. Actually, it's the only directly elected supranational legislative body in the world. This is a lawmaking body. We do make laws here. But we do have a deficit, which is reaching out to the public. We represent democratically. That is a huge challenge. And believe me, I can only appreciate researchers and institutions, think tanks, NGOs at times that help us to reach out to the public we represent, to the citizens we represent, particularly of the matters of our utmost concern. And certainly migration is. I have the honor to chair for some years the #1 lawmaking committee in the House, which is precisely the Committee of Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. It deals with fundamental rights, liberties, all the way to security matters, including criminal law and procedural guarantees. But then, within, we also have Schengen, free movement, which is a fundamental right in itself, and migration and asylum. And you're here to witness your field of research, your field of interest on migration-related issue, particularly integration from migrants, social inclusion of migrants, which is one of the component elements of the whole puzzle that we cherish so much in the work we carry out here. And let me just share some few words, because time is essential in the kind of work we do here. And regrettably so, I have a lawmaking and legislative procedure, which is the so-called trilogue, which is the final phase of some legislative files that we've been working on for some years now, half an hour from now. So I'll make a short summary of the situation as to the Migration and Asylum Pact, and then maybe I can even take some questions so that maybe you can try to touch upon something that has called your attention. Let me just put it bluntly and make the long story short. migration and, as an extension, asylum, were for long the competence of sovereign states, was the realm of sovereign states, the domain of sovereign states. No longer. This is to be so when the Treaty of Lisbon entered into force with the area of liberty, justice, and security, with a clear mandate that we put in place not only a migration and asylum policy making, but a migration and asylum legislation. And that we have done through the years. We have put in place a so-called migration package, we have put in place a so-called asylum package, but yet, throughout the years in which it has been in place, there have been a number of problems arising, and we cannot escape them anymore. First problem, solidarity is the missing link. Whereas in the Treaty of Lisbon, it's clearly enshrined that the pillars on which the whole thing is to be founded is shared solidarity and binding, no, shared responsibility and binding solidarity. There is no solidarity at sight. Second, there has been an increasing number of not only non-compliance, but gross violations, not only of EU law, but also of international and humanitarian law, all much too often. That is why we started out this mandate of the European Parliament 2019-2024 by standing up for a commitment we got from President von der Leyen in the investiture vote to put in place a new migration and asylum pact, which brings legal certainty, rules which are binding for the member states, and finally a balance which is to be struck between shared responsibility and binding solidarity. And that we have been working on for years now. The second point, to make the long story short, is certainly migration and asylum are the most divisive issues in the European agenda, believe me. The most divisive. They are divisive geographically. It's not the same being Estonian that being Maltese. Divisive ideologically. It's not the same to be a jingoist, nationalist, reactionary, extreme far right than to be a progressive. When it comes to migration and asylum related issues, for sure, not the same thing. It's politically and electorally divisive because we have seen it works. Empirically, it works. We have seen many fear-mongering political platforms first spreading fear against migrants. They're a threat. They're a conspiracy against us. They're a threat against our security or our identity, and then exploit electorally that kind of fear. So it's believe me, it's a huge challenge to have this new migration and asylum pact accomplished, achieved. For years, we negotiated within the Parliament, and we built a majority, as we do in the European Parliament, variable geometry majorities in which we make concessions to one another. We negotiate among the rank and files of the European Parliament. Political groups trying to come to terms with some kind of a majority, which is not clear in the outset, but finally it happened. We had a mandate a year ago. We adopted our first reading legislative agreement and mandate on the 5 regulations of which the Migration and Asylum Pact consists of. But then there comes the final phase, which is to engage in a so-called trilogue, which is the word we use to refer to some kind of a hard talk with the Council, to come to terms with the Council, so that that legislation may be actually effective, enter into force. There we are, in trilogues, in the final phase. In Spanish presidency, by the way, we've got a chance, we still have a chance to deliver. We'll still have a chance to adopt the 5 regulations and strike the balance between shared responsibility and solidarity, effective, credible, binding solidarity, not only among member states, but as to migrants. Solidarity as to migrants, particularly to the most vulnerable, international prima facie protection to minors, children, unaccompanied minors, and particularly after search and rescue operation. We have been claiming for years for a EU search and rescue framework. And the final point I would make is that I know it's real hard. It's real hard because believe me, when you engage in talks with the council, you see around the Council of Ministers table many contradictions, divergences, which are hard to overcome, extremely hard to overcome. And of course, solidarity in itself has many enemies around the table of the Council of Ministers. Believe me, I have seen it live. Utter incompatibility, not only contradiction with solidarity, incompatibility with the very idea of solidarity, but yet we have to fulfill the mandate, which is enshrined in the treaty, that there must be solidarity when it comes to not only managing the external borders in a way which is consistent with international humanitarian law, with international law, and also by the EU law we are setting forth, we are putting in place. And so I can only thank, I can only appreciate your impetus on social inclusion and integration of migrants. Integration of migrants. That is, believe me, a point I am very fond of. Migrants are not a threat. Migration is not a threat. It's a fact. It's always been a fact. It's the history of mankind. The history of mankind is the history of migrations. Second, most of migratory fluxes are not aiming to Europe, despite all the fear-mongering, which is spread all around. Not true. Millions and millions and millions and millions of Africans are in the move within Africa. They are not aiming Europe. But the share of those who are willing to risk their lives or lose it in the attempt of setting foot on European soil deserve better. They deserve better. There must be binding law for all the member states when processing their requests, be their asylum requests, be their simple search for hope, for a better life, which is why so many youngsters all across Africa are moving and taking the risk of losing their lives in the attempt, particularly when crossing the Mediterranean or the Atlantic to the Canaries, where I belong, which happens to be the deadliest route to the European Union by far. So I was insisting, I can only appreciate the kind of work that you might be dealing with, which is explaining, which is enlightening with facts, fact-checking with truth, in order to dispel, in order to dismantle, in order to fight back all the lies, fake news, misconceptions, deceptions which are spread about the migratory facts. We can only face if we do it together at the European scale of response, and we do it consistent with our values and with our legislation. That is the point I wanted to share with you all, because I am well aware that one of the difficulties when it comes to paving the way for a change of guard, a change of outlook to the whole migration and asylum-related issues is precisely how spread out those fake news, lies, and misconceptions about the truth of the matter. There is no conspiracy in the world threatening Europe, threatening the European way of life, threatening a social model. They are not a threat. They are not conspiring against us, and they are not going to be deterred simply by rebutting, by rejecting, by pushing back, by paying someone to prevent them from coming, paying someone, whomever, to hold them in some retention center, be it in Libya, be it wherever, let alone say, fly them back to Rwanda where they do not belong in the first place, which is grotesque. And this is the kind of rhetoric I regularly fight whenever I face the Council, representing the European Parliament as chief negotiator for this Migration and Asylum Pact. So if you help us to fact check and put and shed some light, enlightenment on this toxic atmosphere which impedes the kind of progress we are committed to produce, I can only thank you. Now I would gladly get some questions, if you may, and I'll try to make it short. Yes, please.
Yeah, Mr. Juan, thank you so much for your words. Adnan Abdelghani from Save the Children. I mean, thank you for putting it in that way, you know, that migration is part of the natural course of the history. It was since the dawn, and it will be until the end. And we're counting on voices, you know, and on politicians like yourself to always, you know, correct the course. For us, we think that it's important that as a representative, you know, we want to make sure that in three sectors. The first sector is that there is always a check on fundamental rights. There is always check with the dialogues, with trialogues, or within the negotiations, that we go back to the fundamental rights, that, you know, that we are able to make sure that everyone have the same rights in Europe. Second of all, that we saw solidarity, actually, as you said. There were no solidarity, but with the Ukrainian crisis, war, we saw solidarity in Europe, and we saw mechanisms works. And we want, as mentioned in the European Parliament, we want these to blueprint to all migrants that are arriving. You know, all migrants have the same rights when they arrive to Europe. And we count on you and other Parliament members to make sure that these standards are equal for everyone. And the third, I think it's important also to know that, you know, you ask research and you ask us to help you to. I think it's very important that you and other members communicate with migrants in Europe, with diaspora, you know, organizations and migrant-led organizations and migrant experts. And I know that the Commission started to do these steps, and I think it's very important that also members of parliaments communicate and use, and not, I'm saying use, but I really mean that use the experts, the expertise of the migrants that live in Europe, that know the problems, that know solutions. And for sure, I think together we can find better solutions and have better voice to fight disinformation, to fight, you know, all kind of yellow, what they call it, yellow news, you know, around. I think that collaboration we need to work more on it. This is a missing link still in Europe, and we need to make sure that you have a link to migrant society to be part of this fight for fundamental rights.
Thank you. I hear some other voice. Yes.
Maybe we can make a round with all the questions, yes, and then.
Thank you very much for these inspiring words. We are so much surrounded by national populism at national and European level, especially on the toxic issues of migration, so that it is really entering in the European Parliament to hear, let's say, another discourse is already really a reward for all our work. You mentioned the new pact on asylum, on migration and asylum. I read it at the real beginning, so that so many years have passed, but as far as I remember, there is no special provision, let's say, for refugee children. And I do share your opinion that refugee children integration is one of the rare legitimate, let's say, positive discourses on migration, so that on everything else there is a huge opposition. You know this better than me. You are a politician, I'm political science professor, etc. But let's say the refugee children has this advantage that, okay, it's very difficult, let's say, to be in opposition of that. So could a special provision be included in the new Pact for Migration and Asylum, also not so much at a concrete level because there are so many programs for that, but in terms of symbolic politics, it would be a great asset for all of us.
Is a last question there.
Thank you very much, Professor Maria Daniela Maruda, Pantheon University from Athens, participating in IMMERSE project. Thank you very much for your support and for asking the findings of the research. Do we still have time until the EU Asylum and Migration Pact is been adopted, hopefully? I certainly hope during the Spanish presidency, because afterwards I have no hope, honestly. So for us, we still have 2 months. That's it. And already certain changes are concerning. For example, for family reunification, and we have seen unaccompanied minors need their family. Siblings are not considered a family after the reading, the last reading of the EU Pact, one of the drafts. So if a sibling, a brother and a sister is not a family, then I'm really worried about what the outcome of this EU Pact will be. And secondly, I totally support the fact that integration policies are not there or have no real strength in this EU Asylum and Migration Pact. And this affects everyone, even people, migrants that have been in our countries for second generation for ages, and now they suddenly find themselves not welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. I'm going to try to react with some quick response and try to make it shortly. First, migration is a fact, I said. We're living in a global world more than ever before. Migration is an unstoppable fact, unstoppable. At a global scale, there is no way that the so-called denial attitudes, simple rebuttal, simple rejection, paying someone to externalize our external borders or to have them out for the sake of paying someone, for the sake of bribing someone in Africa or something, it's going to work. It's unworkable. It's a dystopia. It's absurd. So believe me, it's a real fight to simply set this principle. And I thank you if you somehow take your own share in the kind of hard work I'm referring to. Second, equal rights, for sure. One of the beauties of the European Union is that finally it brought about a Bill of Rights. We call it the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. You know what? Whereas the US Constitution only protects US citizens, the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union protects anyone under EU law. You don't need to be a European citizen to be protected by the Charter. The only point is whether you are under EU law. Then you might seek for redress for your rights, for your fundamental rights, all the way to the European Court of Justice. And many of the rulings of the European Court of Justice are set on a case which was filed by someone who was not a European citizen, namely a foreigner or a migrant seeking for redress for his or her fundamental rights being protected. So equal rights is absolutely essential. Of course, human beings are to be treated with respect, with dignity, and all the tools of the toolbox or all the links of the chain have to be always under the light of the strong commitment to the fundamental rights. We have made that point when updating the mandate for Frontex, when updating the mandate of Europol, and of course we're making that case also in the files of which the Migration and Asylum Pact consists of. Fundamental rights are to be preserved, even in readmissions, even in returns, because return, surely you know, it's an obsession for ministers of Interior. Return is an obsession for ministers of Interior. There is no single conversation with the Ministry of Interior. Return is not high in the agenda. with the usual allegation that they do not belong, they are not eligible, they are not here seeking for asylum. Most of them are irregular migrants. So if they are not here regularly, there must be something done about who is not entitled to stay, who is not entitled to remain. There must be something. Well, it takes a lot of diplomatic muscle, it takes a lot of readmission agreements, it takes a lot of things which are far from our reach by now, which are not in our hand by now. But even in readmission, fundamental rights are to be respected, are to be protected. So it's absolutely unacceptable that someone is returned under lies, deception, or not letting him or her know what the flight is about. There have to be conditions, even for that link in the puzzle. Then, of course, something was said about the national populism and children, particularly children. Let me tell you, we had asked for the activation of the so-called Temporary Protection Directive for years. Finally, we had it with Ukraine. When Putin launched his war of aggression against Ukraine, finally the Europeans decided to activate the Temporary Protection Directive, meaning that at least 11 Ukrainians fled war zone, seeking for protection in Europe, and at least 4, maybe 5 are staying here for good among us. I'm making this point because it only shows that when there is a will, there is a way. Those 5 million Ukrainians which are living among us have not shaken the European social model. They have not dismantled our welfare. They were not here to deprive us from our well-being, let alone say to depredate it, which is the way they picture the intentions of migrants. I'm saying this because if we can do that with millions and millions of Ukrainians, why cannot we do that with 100,000 Syrians or Afghans? Fleeing also despair, fleeing also lack of hope or prosecution or risk for their personal life, and particularly the vulnerable. Of course, children are also accounted for in the files of which my negotiating team is responsible for, including the crisis regulation under, first of all, prima facie international protection and under meaningful links relocations. We're trying to put in place binding relocation programs in which people are not randomly dispersed all across Europe. They are allocated through a EU relocation coordinator, which is a kind of mandate we want to put in place with this new Migration and Asylum Pact, according to meaningful links. And meaningful links means having siblings elsewhere, having relatives elsewhere, linguistic skills, or maybe some training, maybe some educational skill, which might be relevant for some development pattern in a particular member state. So we do care about that. Yes, we know that when it comes to family reunification, member states, the governments, I mean, the national government, are reluctant to open the scope because they were, okay, family, it's your parents and your children, but not all the family group, not all that you might call a sibling, a brother or a sister. But when it comes to meaningful links, it's accounted for. So I can only tell you, because I'm being compelled to run out for the next legislative meeting I'm facing now, that again, it is absolutely essential that we join forces to explain migration as it is, as a fact that has always been there, and a fact that should not have us afraid, should not make us panic, because we can handle reasonably, if we only change our look in a more positive way. Europe is an aging society. We need migrants to restore the balance. We need migrants to support our social model. We need migrants to pay taxes. We need migrants to work among us. And of course, it takes a lot of inclusion and a lot of integration. As for now, social inclusion and integration, despite the fact that there is a so-called European social pillar that has been somehow overlooked for some years now, remains heavily on the commitment of the national governments, particularly of those who are leaning progressive with a clear social agenda. But yet, I do endorse absolutely that it should take a lot of European budgeting and European financing to support the latter component element of this whole puzzle, which is precisely once they are here among us and working among us, it takes a lot of social inclusion and integration to protect them with equal rights, as we have done with the Ukrainians, because Temporary Protection Directive precisely entails the right to move, the right to free residence, the right to work, the right to job, the right to social services, the right to healthcare, the right to education for children, the whole thing, the whole pack. If we have done that with million Ukrainians, why cannot do that? Why cannot do that if we only will? Do it with those who are once after at times tragically sacrificed everything for the sake of making it here. They deserve better. I thank you all. I have to go.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Juan Fernando López Aguilar, for these encouraging words. So now let's proceed to the second table, which focuses on evidence of social impact from the pilots, successful educational actions, and mental health and psychosocial support. This table will be conducted by Frédéric Ballier. Frédéric Ballier is an associate professor in global health and psychology and the director of the Trinity Center for Global Health, where she also directs the PhD in global health. Frédéric's current research portfolio focuses on the application of psychology to global health with a focus on global mental health, health system strengthening, and human resources for health.
Thank you very much, Maria. I'd like to invite my fellow panelists to come up as well. Thank you. So just to thank as well MEP López Aguilar. I think that was a very inspiring presentation that he gave. I'm going to remind my panelists to please try and stick to the time allocated. I'll give you a 1-minute warning when it's time to wrap up. I think we need to make up for a little bit of lost time. So I am very pleased to introduce our first presentation, which will be given by my colleague, Sarah Kate Landry-Walsh. And Sarah Kate is the technical officer for the refugee-ED project, is the co-director of the Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Research Network, and co-chair of Working Group 4 on the MHPSS roadmap, which focuses on research, evidence, monitoring, and evaluation. She's a central figure in the International Federation of the Red Cross's Psychosocial Reference Center for Migration and Research specifically, and she's worked as a technical advisor and researcher in the Middle East, Central Asia, and South Africa. Thank you, Sarah.
Great, thanks, Fred. And thank you, the refugee team, for having me here to speak about MHPSS. I'm part of a wider team and representing the MHPSS Collaborative, as well as TCD, Trinity College Dublin, on the MHPSS. Could we start the slide, please? Great. Great, thank you. So I wanted to start my presentation with this quote from a poem called Home by Wasan Sher, who is a British Somali poet. And she says that no one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. And I wanted to frame the conversation today just to recognize that children have left their home, and that part of this project that we're working on is also to help them re-establish that sense of safety and belonging that is often found in the home. So this project brings together MHPSS and successful educational actions, and it's important because MHPSS and CS both recognize that that there's an interrelationship between the past and the present, that there has been this journey that a lot of children have gone through, that migratory families have gone through, and that there's this ongoing disruption to their daily lives, but also there is this history that they are learning to live with, and that their basic needs are often disrupted within their need to reintegrate into society. We also recognize with MHPSS and SEERS is that we have a responsibility. And so with the approach that we adopt by bringing MHPSS and SEERS together is that we're also bringing the host community into the solution, and that we're improving people's ability to access their basic needs and services, as well as, you know, children are the future leaders. They are the future citizens of the world, and they are the ones that are going to be making the decisions. Next. So with this project, we had 6 pilot countries, 46 sites, and then 3 different settings, which really were different in, you know, not only the children's with their history, but also within the settings. And so we realized that we needed to know more about the MHPSS needs. And so the team adopted the WHO definition of mental health, which recognizes that mental health everyone has. It's not for certain individuals, it's not defined as conditions, but that mental health is a positive way of being. And that it's a way that a person is able to realize their abilities. They contribute to their community. And so we then took a step further and did a needs assessment, where we found that there was really, and this was across all of our different locations, so that was 46 pilot sites, that there was a need for mental health understanding, the literacy, so what is mental health, how does it impact people, and how do we identify different mental health and psychosocial needs, how do we create culturally sensitive approaches, what are the tools that can be used to identify distress, and how does that also impact how children are interacting within the schools. So a lot of children did show signs and symptoms of distress, anger, isolation, hopelessness, trauma, and depression. So our approach was to build teachers, caregivers, communities with a social emotional literacy, give them a language around mental health, psychoeducation, which is to help them understand how people are impacted, how to support them, so how to rebuild these connections. And so one of the ways that we did this was to create a foundation through an online basic mental health and psychosocial support training. So this was released to all the pilot sites, and based on this foundational knowledge, we then did in-person trainings. So we did the next one, thanks. If we can just go back to the previous slide, please. So we did social emotional learning, we did psychological first aid, and we also did psychological first aid for children, which was really just looking at what are the ways that children are impacted by stress, and then what are ways that caregivers can support children within this, and then also knowing when do they need to refer for specialized services. And then we also did creative expression. So next, please. Thank you. So the reason why we focused on educational spaces was that we also recognized that educational spaces are central in a community. There's also a lot of, there's a system and a space that's already set up, so we just kind of have to step in. And most importantly is we're focusing more on the basic needs of people. And so shifting away from this idea of a specialized services, which also reduces stigma. Also, education is a basic right. Thank you. So our impact, what we saw was 3 key areas, was social integration, well-being, and academic. So really the biggest thing when I was reviewing our stories from the pilot sites was that a lot of children's conflict resolution skills had developed. Social relationship skills had developed, trust between teachers and children had improved. Children were a lot more engaged within their educational circles. They attended a lot more of their classes. So really just saw a lot of a huge impact overall. So one of the big goals of the project was the Brokering Knowledge platform. And this was really about wanting to bring the knowledge to the people and not have the experience, the learnings of this project be segregated. And we wanted to bring together the SEERs, the experiences, the lessons learned, the challenges, as well as the MHPSS resources. And so we worked together with the communities and co-produced this knowledge platform. And you can press next as well, thank you. And so part of it is actually to create a story. So people can go in, they can be like, this is my need, this is what I want to achieve, this is my age group, this is where I want to work, and then out will pop your resources and activities that you can use. So I'm going to fly through this because I've already got the 1 minute, but basically it's bringing together the learning, the inspiration, and the experiences. And if we can go to the next page. It's also building the case for MHPSS and SEERS. So on the webpage, you can find what is SEERS, what is MHPSS, and how to use it. And then next, please. And then we have an amazing resource with over 600 resources, activities, which you can just flip through. And then most importantly is that we have a section of inspiring stories where people share what their lessons learned were, what was the impact, what were some of the challenges. So it's an opportunity to learn from each other. And then building on that, we also have a community of practice where people can actually start their own little group, little network, and share people's experiences live. So that was me running through the Brokering Knowledge platform, which was the big goal of the project. But you can look through it on the QR code, which we'll share with you. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah Kate. I'm just going to move on now to Ellie Kaplani. Ellie is a sociologist focusing on matters of gender, LGBTQI+, domestic violence, trafficking, restorative justice, human rights, and inclusion. She's conducted academic and field research for the Human Rights Defense Center, United African Women's Association, Restorative Justice and Mediation Lab, and Anti-Corruption Youth in Greece. She's currently project manager and social researcher at KMOP. Over to you, Ellie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And good evening, everyone. My colleague Christa Soteriou and I were very delighted to be representing MOP in this IMMERSE and REFUGE-ED joint conference, and also seeing how these two projects can be combined their outputs and findings for a better and more inclusive society. So through the refugee-ED project, we had the opportunity to observe the dynamic and the practical supplemental coexistence of educational and psychosocial support practices in school settings. In Greece, we began the needs assessment with 10 pilot sites, but due to relocations of refugee populations and the transfer of teachers and school staff to other regions, we implemented the practices with, in cooperation with 8 schools in total. We followed a co-creation procedure to create a plan on how we will implement and the practices and which practices will be implemented. And as was co-decided with the schools, the successful educational action that was implemented was dialogic literary gatherings. So, as you can see, a dialogic gathering is an educative and cultural activity where people get together to discuss and create knowledge and meaning about the best universal cultural and scientific knowledge. So in the dialogic gathering, the attention is not only put on the author, the era, or the technique used, but also on the feelings, the thoughts, the interpretations, and the interventions made by the participants, in our case, the young participants. And of course, there are reflections on the artwork under discussion. So among others, this practice, if we can go back, thank you. So this practice lies on the basis of egalitarian dialogue and the equality of differences. And this means that people express themselves and their argument is valid based on actually the validity of their arguments rather than any other characteristic or status such as power. And also everyone is respected and they are different, and this makes them equal. Now, in terms, if we can now move forward, in terms of the mental health and psychosocial support practices, we focused very much on psychological first aid because teachers have not previously received any training on relevant practices, and as they attested, it was very, very important to integrate this method in their day-to-day approach. So the incorporation of this element of PFA in the trainings that we organized in Greece provided the teachers with the chance to effectively handle crisis situations, not only, as of course mentioned previously by Sarah, not only within the DLG circle, but also outside of it. And they had to combine to use these two practices supplementary. And we were very enthusiastic to combine these two methods, these two components, as a way to address sense of belonging, well-being, and academic and students' academic progress holistically. This combination for us specifically meant that children would discuss values, concerns, issues, or even the meaning of simple words in dialogic literary gatherings. And then intervention of mental health and psychosocial support would be made ad hoc and when deemed necessary based on the discussions made and the issues that were raised during the circle. And of course, this specifically applied to children who were in distress after discussing something specific during the DLGs. So in terms of more specific impact through the DLGs, and of course as enhanced as enhanced by PFA, the participating children improved their comprehension and their communication skills, and they also expanded their vocabulary. For instance, during the studying of Odyssey, by Omer, and especially the excerpt by that focuses on the Odysseus companions opening the Aulus bag out of suspicion that Odysseus hides treasures. Children from one class, sorry, I got the 1 minute warning. So the children, they learned the word suspicion, and they also got to discuss on what it means to suspect your friend, and how can you handle this situation? How do you address it? Then children also enhance their sense of community and their cultural intelligence, showing increased interest on their classmates' cultures, and also supporting one another. Characteristically, there was a paradigm of older children supporting younger children in the first steps of the DLG sessions. And finally, another great impact was the development of a safe space and general confidence of children. And for Greece, one of the greatest achievements was that there was a child on the autism spectrum, and after actively participating in the DLGs, they no longer needed a parallel support teacher to participate in the class. So I will now keep to the minute, and if you can allow me to close with a quote from our teachers, which was very important to us. There were many, the teacher told us that there were many times that students came to me to suggest paintings, music, or literature to work on because they wanted to share parts of their culture with their classmates, or because they happened to see, hear, or read something that they liked and wanted to express their feelings and exchange views with other students. To us, this was remarkable, as formerly many of these children were shy or talked and played only with specific children in the class. This form of participation is something we have rarely seen before. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ali. Thank you. Next, we have Tiziana Chiappelli. Tiziana is Lecturer of Intercultural Communications, Gender Studies, and Multicultural Education at the University of Florence. An experienced researcher on national and international projects, she has investigated the processes of social cultural inclusion and exclusion of minorities with a focus on migrants, gender and cultural differences, educational systems, and active citizenship processes. Thank you, Tiziana.
Thank you so much. And I'm really pleased to share with you some of the results of our project. In particular, I will focus on what's happened in Italy and a specific methodology. In Italy, we worked together with the University of Florence, with the CIS, which is International Cooperation South of Palermo, and the implementation was in Sicily Island because it's strategic due to its geographical position, is where most of the landings of migrants are arriving now. In particular, the implementation of actions concern 3 territories, in particular the regional capital, which is Palermo, and also the southern towns of Vittoria and Acate, which are part of an area that recently, in the last decades, has been transformed into intensive agriculture production. And thousands of regular and irregular migrants are now working there in the greenhouses, and the integration project, as you can understand, both for adults and their children, are strategic for us. Regarding the kind of structure in which we operated, as you can see from the slide, we worked in 3 unaccompanied minor centers coordinated by local associations, but of course in agreement with the Ministry of Interiors. Then also 10 schools, of which 4 primary schools, 4 secondary schools of 1st grade, and also 2 secondary schools of 2nd grade, meaning high schools, and also 1 adult education center. In these centers and schools, in order to apply the principle of refugee project for the co-construction of the research and interventions, we proceeded with a need analysis. And according with the results, with the teachers, educators, and people involved in the actions, we selected the type of activities more suitable for the specific case. Among other successful education actions, in 2 cases, we decided to apply altogether the dialogic model for conflict prevention and resolution, in particular in 1 school class and 1 unaccompanied minor center, divided into 2 flats community. So, okay, thank you. And what is the dialogic model of prevention and conflict resolution? Here you can see the 3 main key elements, the 3 main pillars. First of all, the objective is the definition of a coexistence guideline or norm with the whole community. The model is based on dialogue as a tool to overcome inequalities. The treatment of conflict, consensus among all parties involved on the rules of coexistence takes a center stage. This generates a dialogue shared by the entire community. And you can see here you have the neighbors, the center staff, the children, the teacher, of course, and the educators and the families. This generates a dialogue shared by the entire community throughout the normative process. And this type of model allows a qualitative improvement of coexistence, both in the center and in the whole educational community. Second principle, the more people and the more diverse, the more arguments and the better the chances to achieving better guidelines or norms that are valid for everyone. According to this model, we create spaces for dialogue to prevent conflicts, and to do that, we require the involvement of all the community, teachers, educators, students, etc., so that all opinions were heard and considered during the process of establishing the rules, the common rules of coexistence. And so differences are essential, and we consider them during the whole process. And as a third pillar, we had that is, which is also, again, not only a pillar, but also a result, that since everybody contributed to the creation of the norms of coexistence, then everybody feels responsible for the guidelines and the norm implementation. So in this case, the opinion of all members of the community have been gathered, and everyone has a contribution. If you can, yeah, thank you. So what we did in concrete. In concrete, we worked in two sites, the first level secondary schools and the unaccompanied minor centers, which was divided into flats, as I've already said, from situation of conflict, which was more or less latent, but in general of discomfort, in one case, the school. And regarding the communities, there were like a lack or a low level of social interaction, and in particular, the migrant, the minors, didn't communicate each other. So we worked through the egalitarian dialogue, and we tried to build together the rules, and also to decide together a common objective. In particular, we used two main tools, which are strategies of intervention, the Brave Club and the Zero Violence Community. And also we succeed in creating an orthotherapy path with the unaccompanied minors. So our objective was to create more cohesion, new friendships, and also more trust among students, and also between the students and the minors and the teachers and the educators, as well as the community. And thank you. So, what were the expected results? Of course, we wanted to build or reinforce emotional well-being and also to foster social integration, but in parallel to improve academic performance, which are the three main objectives of all our projects, of course. And so we expected that students will feel better at school and in classes, and they perceive all this environment as safe and violence-free. And also we work to improve the coexistence and relationships inside and outside the class and the space and the common spaces. In particular, giving them or share with them tools to build positive relationships. We also try to provide participants with a way to defend themselves without violence. So speaking, sharing, creating a common meaning with other people, not only the classmates or the flatmates. And also we try to promote among students and flatmates the freedom to decide for themselves and to share their decision and to expect that their decision shared together would be respected. And this is what happened in particular. You can see in one case on your left, you can read what the students wrote together. For example, it's just an example, this one. It helped us to get to know our classmates better. So that means that they were not really in a real connection from a human point of view. They only shared the class. And after these activities, they shared experiences, they share feeling, moods, etc. And these students also write. Starting from Aesop's fables, we talked about everything, even personal relation, and created the rules that improved the relationship in our class. So this is a very important feedback. We received this kind of feedback also from teachers, not only from the students. In the other case, which is the case of the unaccompanied minors, you can see in the paper on your right, which is also translated into different languages. So it was also a good exercise from an academic point of view. They wrote A Good Living Coexistence, this is the title, and then what are the list of good living coexistence, the main ingredients: sharing routines, first of all, respect the personal sphere, don't leave others alone. So as you can see, we succeed in creating a free and non-judgmental environment in class, and also we build a good relationship among the students. And in respect of the academic results, of course, they have to discuss and also to use the Italian language, which was a foreign language for them, so they improved the knowledge of the Italian language. And in general, the climate inside the classroom and the flat was friendly, and of course they felt more welcomed. And as we know, also from the scientific result of all our project, refugee-ED and IMMERSE, this has an impact also on the academic aspects. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiziana. Next, we have Bilal Al-Mubarak. Bilal is the Chief Executive Officer of the Support Group Network, Sweden, a migrant-led organization initiated by refugees to support refugees on all levels, with a special focus on social inclusion, business empowerment, interculturality, and higher education inclusion. Bilal is also a doctoral candidate at the University of Barcelona, working to scale up the SCAs and MHPSS to conflict-affected populations in the Arab-speaking world. Over to you, Bilal. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. So in Sweden, basically, we have done the pilot in 3 different pilot sites with 3 different settings. The first one was in a city called Mondal, in a meeting point there, and the second one was in our intercultural center, the first intercultural center in Sweden, And then the third one was in the biggest asylum camp in the Nordic countries, which is called Restad Gård Asylum Accommodation Center. And if we move to the next one, in the 3 pilot sites, we have done both dialogical literary gathering, DLGs, and interactive groups, which I'm talking more closely today about. And the interactive groups, as you can see here, there is some small picture of it, and it is about creating small heterogeneous groups in regard to ability level, to gender, to culture, to ethnicity. So grouping students and children into those heterogeneous groups and using the resources that already exist in the community, which is making more collaborative and dialogical groups and education setting instead of the traditional way, which is we have seen in our cities where we are implementing the pilot, for example, in schools. There are up to 30 students with only 1 teacher. So you can imagine which difference is being done there. You can take next. So interactive groups is basically the reallocation or rearrangement or reorganization of the class into those different groups, and here you can see it how it looks like in reality when exploiting the resources that already existing by mobilizing people from the community, from the education community, volunteers, parents, and students themselves to be participating and taking a role in this education setting. And these are two pictures as you can see. If we go to the next picture, maybe you are wondering, take the previous one, about the impact that we have had after implementing these 2 activities or actions, both DLGs and interactive groups. We have basically seen that they both promote collaborative and dialogical learning, and they are raising expectations for students, and then they are positively affecting the mental health and well-being for students for another positive effect. So we took one after each other. The first one, we have seen that the learning process has increased the students' motivation and enthusiasm and led to better academic performance. We have seen it clearly. And then we have seen that this collaborative and dialogical and co-creational approach encouraged both not only teamwork, but also the feeling that the students are working together. It's not an individual success, but it's the success of the whole group. And then it's providing opportunities for peer learning. So they were learning from each other in a more simple way than doing from other or from the teacher, for example. And then it's also problem solving in this setting. And then we have also seen that it is breaking glass ceilings. And by this, we mean that children developed a deeper understanding of, for example, mathematical principles through those interactive exercises and discussions among them, while strengthening their communication and critical thinking skills. We have also seen that these practices constituted or contributed to additional support to their ordinary school lessons. And when it comes to the MHPSS, the mental health and the psychosocial support, we have seen that those actions are increasing the children's participation in learning activities. I will give more examples about this after explaining the whole picture, because it's when it comes to be living in an asylum camp, maybe for a longer period, then it's totally different from everyone's else life. You have too much limited resources, the uncertainty that you are, the whole family is living, and the journey and the trauma that maybe is accompanying the whole journey and what have been done in the home country and so on. and then the impact of the war, the losses of beloved ones, and so on. And then the poverty and uncertainty itself, it's really a big problem because they don't know. Are they going to stay in that country, or in Sweden, now we are speaking, or are they going back? And if they are going back, what's going to happen, and so on, those long discussions. So it's too much that the child is put on. And they of course, they are part of those discussions and the situation that the whole family is going through. And this is leading to difficult consequences that it's difficult to concentrate on learning, on being able to give more to their studies. And then they have also maybe lack of interest in education in general. But we have also seen that when our team is doing, they are addressing those needs in a very collaborative and closer way. It's contributing to a better performance. And our team needed to attend to, for example, to their emotional well-being, to motivate their participation in the activities. And I can give clearer examples. For example, we have had children that they couldn't speak at all. They were very much shy, maybe traumatized, post-trauma, and so on. They were just being there and not able to look in the eyes. They were too shy, don't want to be seen either. So one time by other, their parents, sometimes they were there, they were motivated, they were being included in those settings, they were interactively interacting with others. They have, after the whole pilot, they have felt belonging, and they have been part of this bigger group, so they have felt safe, and they felt like I belong to this place, and this is my group. And they were able also to easily create friends from the group. That was very nice examples. And at the end, they were able to ask questions and ask also to just suggest new activities like writing or drawing or painting and so on. So you can see the whole shift that is being done from the beginning to the end. It's really fascinating, and we are proud of those results. And we believe in those two tools, both, I mean, the success education actions as well as the MHPSS. And that's why now as a PhD student, I would like to expand them to the Arabic world, and that's why we have chosen a conflict zone to start applying them and study their social impact, and hopefully they will be effective as they have been always. I stop there.
Thank you, Bilal. Some really nice examples there as well. Thank you. Last but not least, we have Benjamin Menendez, who has been a Spanish language and literature teacher across secondary education centers in Spain since 1995. Over the years, he's held various leadership positions. He enjoyed a 4-year stay as a visiting professor in public schools in New York. Currently, he's a teacher at IES Alfonso II in Oviedo and a member and vice president of the Asturias Associación for Evidence-Based Education. Thank you very much, Benjamin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, buenas tardes, buenas tardes in Asturian. It's a very exciting and important for me and for my community coming here to the House of the Dialogue in Europe to talk about education and social transformation. Because as Paulo Freire said, to speak the true word is to transform the world. That's why projects like refugee-ED, based in the best evidence in education, are so important for my school. In 150 years, my school has achieved, for the first time, a very significant improvement in learning, coexistence, and social well-being for all people, including students in the most vulnerable situation like migrant students. My school, IES Alfonso II, is one of the 14 pilot sites of the refugee project in Spain. The school in a small city, Oviedo, is one of the oldest in my region, Asturias, in the northwest of the country. It's a public secondary school with more than 1,000 students and 90 teachers. As you can see in the first picture, the school used to be very homogeneous and received mostly middle and higher class students. As Queen Letizia is one of our alumni. In the last 20 years, the school has become a community with a beautiful, beautiful diversity, with the students from different countries, languages, and cultures. However, the response to this challenge, diversity, for many years was not satisfactory, as we were having school failure, problems of coexistence, early school dropouts. In the last 5 years, the dream of our community was to reach the highest standard for all, with action based on the best available evidence, the successful educational actions. I will refer to them as SEAs from now on. The first step was teachers training. We had dialogic pedagogical gatherings and talks given by researchers during the whole school year. The first SEA we conducted with the students was the tutored library. After school, Monday to Thursday, we offer a safe place with high expectation for all students with or without special need. Let me say hello, but that's good because they are there right now in this moment, studying and collaborating. The first step, the standing learning time is a welcoming place for everybody. And in this case, for refugee or migrant children who arrive in the middle of the school year. Of course, many of them come with immediate need to learn Spanish, and they can attend to the tutorial library to improve their interaction in Spanish. Many times, this is the first contact with the school. And there, they can interact in an academic and friendly context with volunteers and peers. In the morning of the following day, they will find these people in their classroom or in the hallways. Some classmates, teachers, and volunteers will know them, call them by their name, and make their first day of school less overwhelming. And newcomers, they now know already what is going on in the classroom in academic terms, thanks to the tutored library. In this extended learning time, we will create friendships, and we are prepared to take full advantage of the other Cs we carry out, interactive groups and dialogical gatherings. We have many examples that testify the quality, frequency, and intensity increase the effectiveness of the Cs and accelerate the academic, social, and emotional and ethical improvement for all. Our results are confirming that evidence. Extended learning time helps to avoid segregation on the regular classes during school hours by creating new inclusive learning spaces in which students carry out activities with volunteer teachers, their peers, families, and other community members. You can have all your specific needs being attended without having to be segregated, for that leading to outstanding results, both in terms of living together, well-being, and the academic outcomes. As you can see, every day we receive very positive feedback from different members of the community with quality results regarding higher expectation, inclusion, accelerating learning, quality interaction, etc. Testimonies like, it's the first time that studying worked for me, from special needs students, 11 years old, or coming here gives me life from a sick volunteer mother, or in my previous school, everybody was Spanish, so you had to pretend. Here, you don't have to. Except for migrant students, etc., are also shown in the very positive quantitative result our high school obtains. Keeping always in mind the best results for all, the impact of disease can be clearly seen. As you can see, the repetition rate had dramatically dropped. especially in the early grades, where we focus more to make easier the transition from primary to secondary school. Also, repetition of negative behavior and severe absenteeism have decreased a lot. The impact in our school also affects our context. The impact of evidence-based education is growing, reaching other spaces. More than 10 schools in the region are implementing CS. Learning communities are beginning to appear, which means that more schools are committed to implement, with the help of their community, evidence-based actions with social impact. Also, inter-school training networks have been created, with more than 500 teachers involved in 4 years. On the other hand, an association to promote evidence-based education has been created, is connected with other similar associations in Spain. We can also talk about political impact. Last year, the Regional Ministry of Education in Asturias has included the CS in its teacher training regulations, which extend the impact to more and more schools and communities consistently. Projects like refugee-ED make possible for us to practice egalitarian dialogue and evidence-based approaches. This way, and I conclude, we foster transformation networks, advance in inclusion, and build welcoming communities, ensuring every child's right to quality education. Thank you for that to the Refugee Project, and thank you all.
Thank you, Benjamin. A good reminder that CIAs are only as successful as the teachers and parents and children that take part in them. So thank you very much for that. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists, Sarah Kate, Ali, Tiziana, Bilal, and Benjamin. And thank you all as well for your attention. Thanks.
So thank you all. We are now transitioning to the third and final table of the conference titled Experiences of Co-Creation, a Participatory and Inclusive Method, which will be conducted by Areti Bouraki. In this panel, we will include the speakers from the first panel who are still pending. So if you would like coffee, water, or refreshments, please help yourselves during the panel.
Sou o único português que está lá. Os outros não.
Oh, oops.
I can't tell. No, I think there's an order, so. I don't know. Yes, I'm Anna. Very nice meeting you. I brought my.
Volete andare su Biagini? La sala di...
Okay. So, hello to everyone. We are all together here. So, for the third part of the final conference of IMMERSE and REFUGE-ED Horizon projects. And my name is Areti Bouraki, and I'm the project manager of IMMERSE project for the regional declarative primary and secondary education of Crete from Greece. And for the next hour, we'll have the chance to go through a very interesting, collaborative, and mainly inclusive method that was founded in the core of both projects, IMMERSE and REFUGE-ED. So we can share, I think, experiences and analyze the different aspects of co-creation. And I have to say here that I was really very glad when they gave me the role for moderator of this roundtable, because I had the chance to be also part of the research team that we conducted the workshops in Crete with refugee students, and it was really very strong experience, a very strong moment of this project that gave the space to children to express their needs and to us to hear their voices. So I will introduce you our speakers for this roundtable. Shirley Martin is a social policy lecturer at the School of Applied Social Studies and Deputy Director of BA Early Years and Childhood Studies program. Her research has contributed to the policy landscape on children's rights and voice in Ireland, and has provided an important evidence base for national policy in children and young people's participation in Ireland. Shirley contributes to the area of child participatory research methodologies and extensively uses child-centered research and established children's research advisory groups for a number of her research projects. She is the Irish lead for IMMERSE and a Work Package 3 coordinator. Shirley, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Areti. Hi, everybody, and it's a pleasure to speak this afternoon about the work that we did in IMMERSE with children and young people, and in particular with children and young people as being active participants and agents on the IMMERSE project. So first of all, I'd like to thank my colleagues in Cork who are listening. So Dr. Deirdre Horgan and Dr. Jackie O'Riordan and Dr. Rihanna Mayer, who have also we've worked alongside each other on this project in a very participatory way, as is our method of working together. So yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge their input in this as well. So I'm going to briefly speak about the model that we use in terms of co-creation and the role of children in IMMERSE. And I'll talk a little bit about our advisory group and our kind of philosophy and the models that we've used, some activities that we did with our advisory group. And then more importantly, we have a video that we made in the last couple of weeks with children and young people involved in IMMERSE, which I will share with you. Okay, next slide. So in terms of the kind of influences on our work, we've used the Lundy model. So Professor Laura Lundy developed this model initially in 2007, looking at the kind of possibilities around participation of children in education settings. And the model has evolved and it's become part of the national policy of child participation actually in Ireland. And last year when Ireland had the presidency of the Council of Europe, there was a lot of work done with the Lundy model at a European level as well. So we were very happy to use this on IMMERSE around our interactions and our work with children, particularly with our advisory group. And the model emphasises aspects such as space, voice, audience and influence, and they all influenced both our kind of everyday interactions with our advisory group, but also kind of our broader kind of views on how the influence of children should permeate the project more generally. We also use the work of Franks, who is a child migration researcher in the UK, who also uses participatory approaches, but acknowledges that for some research projects, including very large research projects like IMMERSE, that participation has to be, viewed in a way that, can be taken as pockets of participation, so that there's participative ownership of some specific facets of the research process. So where it's not maybe appropriate to have children involved in every aspect, and that children have to be given the choice around the aspects of participation that they're actually involved in. Next slide. So in terms of IMMERSE, as you've seen from the earlier panel, IMMERSE is a huge project and quite complex. There's quite a lot of work packages. So we worked with the Children and Young People's Advisory Group in a way that was collaborative. Again, we used Jerry Lansdowne's kind of influence there around collaborative research process with children that acknowledged that they're partners and influencers of our research process. They were involved in mainly in 6 of the work packages. So in terms of co-creation of the indicators, there was involvement of children, not just our advisory group, but broader groups of children to influence how that would look and the types of indicators that were used for the IMMERSE dashboard of indicators. In work package 3, which is the work package we've led in University College Cork, they were very involved in terms of data design, validation and data analysis. And they're 2 of the points that I'll come back to in a minute. In work package 2, they're also involved in design, and there's some work going on at the moment around young people's involvement in validation of the dashboard of indicators for IMMERSE. In work package 4, our Children's Advisory Group helped co-design the toolkit that's used for policy recommendations. And work package 5 is where our main work with our advisory group sits. And then work package 6, we've been working with our advisory group and other groups of young people to help us design outputs for IMMERSE, including children's animation, being involved in some of our social media campaigns and our children's report as well. So really, it's and this is kind of going back to the idea of the pockets of participation. At various points, there's a role and a kind of a co-creation process with children and young people. So just our advisory group then itself. So myself and my colleagues in Cork have a lot of experience working with children in this way, in this process, in advisory groups. So we've established the advisory group for the project more generally, and it was a great pleasure to work with the group of young children and young people over the last 5 years now. So some of them are no longer children and are actually in university or are outside of school, and it's been a very kind of long research project in that way, and it's really interesting to develop that kind of relationship with a group of young people over such a long period. So we worked with 18 migrant and refugee children resident in Ireland, most of whom were from refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds, a number of whom were living in direct provision at the time that we started the project. And the whole concept of the advisory group is that they are not the subject of the research, but are informants and experts in their own right. And again, we draw on the work of Laura Lundy and McAvoy, so that they're to represent peers in the process rather than be the subjects of the research. And the kind of approaches that we use then. So again, they're involved in different aspects. So the data collection, data analysis, at some points, dashboard of indicators. So it requires acknowledging the practical and time constraints related to children's involvement as experts and as advisors. It's important to think about their desired commitments and their flexibility. Children are very busy, and there's different points that they were more active than others, and creating very child-friendly spaces and regular meetings. So we, had our meetings on Saturday mornings in UCC, and obviously we organised transport, creating very kind of participatory, child-friendly environments, and the importance of food, and the importance of compensation for young people involved in various ways. And we focused a lot as well on capacity building, so making sure that young people felt very comfortable in this environment. So we focused a lot on making sure that they were familiar with social research concepts, with jargon-free workshops and activities, with understanding as well their social worlds and their social experiences, because that's the expertise that they were bringing to the setting. So that was really important. And we tried to support their own kind of social capital networks, so including things like getting them work experience when they were in school. They have to do that in Ireland if they're doing transition year, so supporting that. And we developed a CPD certification for them, for everybody that was involved, writing them references, you know, for courses or for jobs, and really supporting them in whatever way that we can. And again, kind of constantly updating them on the project progress, going back to the Lundy model and the importance of feedback. Yeah. So just to give you some examples, these are some of the activities that our Young People's Advisory Group was involved in. So they were advising and informing the research process throughout. They were involved in developing, validating and piloting research materials, particularly our research questionnaires. And they were involved in some data analysis, which I'll touch on in a minute, and identifying themes for the qualitative research. And also they've been involved in some aspects of dissemination of the results, including the video that you'll see in a minute. So in terms of the validation of the questionnaires, so this was, they had a kind of key role in this. They were the first young people to obviously look to pilot the questionnaires, but even previous to that, they helped us look at the questions and help define and validate and pilot some of the questions that were being used. They were treated in the same way that other experts were. We had a Delphi group for the questionnaire, where we engaged with experts around Europe to validate our research instruments. And the SciPag also were treated as experts, and they also looked at the questionnaire in the same way as the Delphi group, looking at the clarity of the questions, whether they were adequate, suggestions for improvement, and these were taken on board. So for instance, they were very concerned about how COVID was being dealt with in the survey. And they had a really important role in thinking about how other young people would experience the questionnaire, while at the same time not being the subjects of the research. And that's really important as well, that their role is there as experts. So one of the other aspects of the project they were involved in was the data analysis. So we did a lot of work, and I would have to say Rihanna Mir, one of our postdocs, was really really good at this in terms of explaining complex quantitative elements of the project to both myself and the young people involved, to be honest. She was excellent at breaking this down to a level that was very approachable for everybody. And she designed some really interactive workshops around explaining data and explaining how you'd analyze the data and how you understand relationships and variables, and over really a kind of meetings over a period of about a year, and worked with young people around this. And some of it was really interactive, like cutting up the questionnaire and developing different relationships using Lego, using different types of metaphors and ideas. And so there's some of the outputs that you can see in some of the pictures that the children themselves designed around collecting data and thinking about visualizing the data. And this process went on, as I said, for over a year. So we met with them twice a year. And this particular process around data analysis really took quite a long time and was as interactive and as child-friendly as possible. So they identified particular sets of relationships that they were actually interested in exploring. And then we actually did that analysis and took that data back to them. And the next workshop was around actually engaging with that, and that some of that is now fed into our main stage data analysis for IMMERSE, which is really interesting. They were particularly interested actually in age and gender and those intersectionality aspects of childhood. Of course, it's young migrants themselves, they experience that in their everyday, so their own experiences really fed into our understanding and our like what we felt was important as well for the data analysis. They also were involved in some of the outputs, and at various stages were involved in creating some of the social media campaigns and blogs and things that were important for IMMERSE in the last couple of years in terms of our public messaging as well. And they also helped us design some of the child-friendly outputs that are going to be released from under the project. So we're almost finished animation based on IMMERSE and based on the outputs and child-friendly reports. I think there's one piece missing there. And they also helped us to create a response to the Irish national policy on anti-racism in 2023. We did a policy submission with them. and they had to co-author a book that's going, or sorry, a chapter in a book that will be out next year in the Oxford Handbook of Research Methodologies. Next one, yeah. And then just in conclusion, projects like IMMERSE can really contribute to policy grounded in children's realities and produce more responsive policies and services. The challenges are things like the costs of running these advisory groups is actually very expensive because you obviously have to compensate children in terms of their travel and food and you know, reward them at different points of the year if they're very involved in projects. And the logistics is very important. Recognition of their involvement is important, ensuring that the kinds of activities are appropriate and sensitive to their needs, particularly vulnerable children. But they can also offer as a way to conduct rights-informed research, which is meaningful for children, and particularly for enabling voices of migrant children. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a video that we made with some of the, so we've got 2 members of our advisory group in the video, and then we have also a young person, Faith, from a school, and we've been working with this school over the last kind of 15 months as well, and they've done things like they've taken over our Instagram account. They've really helped us with kind of creating some of our dissemination materials and piloting things like our policy workshop as well. And the Faith also was involved, was one of the young people who's been involved as doing some work experience on the project as part of her own school experience. And then the 4th person is Bushetta, who's a young migrant who did an internship with us. Oh, is there no sound? I know. Unless this Prasanna want to go, and then if it's fixed, yeah.
I think we could watch this video at the end of the round table, maybe, and go on with the next speaker. Or do you think it's okay? Yes, so we'll continue, then we'll have the video at the end of the panel. The next speaker, Mrs. Anna Krasteva, is Doctor Honoris Causa de l'Université de Lille, in France, President of the Policy and Citizens Observatory, Migration, Digitalization, Climate, Professor of Political Sciences, and Director of SERB, New Bulgarian University. She will present co-creation from refugee-ED project side. So the floor is yours, Mrs. Krasteva.
Next. What do you want to be when you grow up? The most trivial question, the most tragic answer. We do not grow up. They kill us as children. It is a quote from the social media of the most prominent voice of intercultural dialogue in my country, which completely corresponds to the reality. One child is killed every 10 minutes. I wrote this slide yesterday evening, and this morning, I was told that one child is killed every 6 minutes, just in one of the conflicts. If I start with that, it is to remind to all of us that refugee children, unaccompanied minors, they live in 2 geographies, the geography of war, of conflicts, and the one of exile, refuge, the temporalities of bombing of the family and of the school day. And how to deal with this trauma in the very specific context of transit. This is one of the major challenges of countries like mine, or of our team, Bulgaria. The second huge challenge we discussed briefly also with the chair of LIBE, national populism. I can't think of a country today where there is no populism today, but fortunately not in all countries populism is mainstreamed. But this is the case of my country. Mainstream, just to give you one simple example of our project, when we asked the governmental agency for refugees for access to the safe zones with unaccompanied minors, they wanted that the term integration, which is part of the name of the project, be deleted. They did not want even the agency for refugees to accept in an official letter. So we had to translate in a very creative way also the concept. Nothing original per se of this national populism, which is what we call in political science jargon, exclusive intersectionality. So they are both anti-minorities and anti-migrants, also with anti-several other things, but these are the 2 anti which are very relevant to our project, because in almost all of our schools where there are refugee children, there is a higher percentage, much higher than in the average of the population, Roma children, so the biggest minority in the country. The second element relevant to our project, there are 2 safe zones for unaccompanied minors now in Sofia we worked with, and the third one is under construction in one town, and we already had the fieldwork there. And because there is a refugee camp there, all political campaign of the far-right parties, they start by this small town, all political campaigns, so that for European elections, for local elections, for national elections, etc. And so create the context within which we have to deal with migrants integration. What to do in this context? So transit country from one side, mainstreamed populism from another side. So the easy answer is, okay, so this is the status quo, we do not do anything, so, or to do even less. So we opted for the non-obvious solution, not to do less, but to do more. So to countering, let's say both this, okay, so a really objective situation, but to go beyond. And I will briefly discuss in 2 different perspectives, the one I call power of the new narrative and the magic of the new agency. Co-creation is the very beautiful name of our roundtable. For us, it is not a method, not just a method. It is really our philosophy of integration, our overall methodology, our paradigm. And what I would do, so that in really the Zoom technology, very briefly, I took a few examples to illustrate, let's say, how we try to countering really populist discourses, but also to produce meaningful impact. Again, just a few examples. What and who was and still is and will be our major asset? The leader and our Spanish or Catalan or whatever friends, let's say the narratives of your successes of transforming a school or schools with very high level of the diversity into successful schools was really the biggest, the most impactful narrative, because it is a narrative of transformative change, that a change is possible. It really counters very strongly the realities, not only the discourses, but the realities in my country, where if the percentage of Roma children increases in a school, the Bulgarian parents, let's say with their children, they leave the school. And if plus the Roma, okay, so that they are the refugees, so that several actors, they do consider these schools as a lost school. And if you show them evidence-based that this is not a condemnation, it could be an opportunity, it was really an amazing, let's say, message for educators, for the teachers, because they did not believe either, for the civil society organizations, for the policymakers. We are still at the real beginning of the road. But really,
ya están diciendo el autobús. Me han dicho que...
okay, dialogues could be challenging. Next one. We are also proud of some of our innovations, so that we like this idea we really forged. We call it green bridges as it is as intercultural gardens, or the other way around, so that it is we plant with the kids and the teachers, but mainly with the kids, plants and flowers and small trees, and after that we have the schools and the kids organize cultural programs. And also that one small, very touching example within one of those programs, one refugee boy with another boy, Bulgarian, with specific needs. They were reciting a Bulgarian poem, and the refugee child was reciting better than the Bulgarian one, who was looking at him as a real hero. And so that all the others, let's say, singing around, so that really very, very, very touching. So we call it a greening intersectionality, because it encompasses in a very beautiful way all ages, from the pupils to the teachers to the professors, of course, boys and girls, all languages, because independent of the level of language, okay, we are all together with our responsibility for the nature. So both nature and the culture very much combined in a very playful atmosphere, so that really very very nice innovation. Next one. Really zooming, so that the author of this beautiful, let's say, pictures is here. No need to explain to our audience, let's say, how traumatic it is to narrate a refugee self. we do not have any magic recipes, but let's say when the narration is creative, when it is collective, like in the case here, so the refugee children were invited by a wonderful team of Mina, who is here, and a psychologist from the International Organization for Migration, to construct, to invent a narrative of a small documentary, which is also a fact already and could be shown after or tomorrow, etc., so that it has both a therapeutic effect, it has a huge empowerment effect because they are authors and also actors of their discourse in a very creative setting. And so that, of course, also other examples of expressive therapy, etc., and around all those activities, strengthening in a beautiful way our collaboration with the International Organization for Migration. Next.
We have 2 minutes more.
2 minutes? Okay, so spiral of creativity. I call it spiral of creativity. So you see how many steps of the chain, those creative practices, of course, they invite, it is an invitation for teachers to innovate. There are no borders, let's say, for inspiration. So the vibes went to the States where a young photographer liked those activities so much that she fundraised a small amount of money for equipment. She came, and with the support of, again, of our team, she organized the workshop, the photo workshop. There is a nice exhibition today, etc. So that one creative activity really stimulates other actors to join who are not part of the team to join. So the exhibition is, has already been displayed. We'll show it again in one of our activities soon, to see 1 or 2 more. Voice. When we say in social sciences voice, it means very often a concept, voice versus exit, it means a metaphor, etc., etc. But in this very small, let's say, story, I'll tell you, voice is a literal, the voice of a girl of mixed origin who did not speak. And in one of the interactive groups, which was on a specific subject, my colleagues are here could give more details, some of the kids for the first time approached this lack of voice and asked her, not with their voices, but in a written form, let's say, why you do not speak? And she, for the first time, responded to those pupils in the interactive groups, not to the psychologists, not to the teachers, etc., that in fact she can speak, but she does not speak because she is ashamed of the sound of her voice. So once this revelation became a fact, already more professional actors like psychologists entered the game, etc. But really the creativity, I call it magic of interactivity, of trust, of friendship, where the kids were more innovative and creative than the professional because they produced the trigger. Dialogical literary gathering. Okay, so we could write a book on that everywhere. It is, let's say, the magic, so that when we did that with the teachers, it really strengthened the bonds of a community of practice and learning by these poetic and effective links. But it is, of course, much more impactful for the pupils. And I'll give just one example. And again, my team, our team is here, they could detail, etc. That a teacher was complaining, students do not read, etc. But okay, they, for this exercise, they read small pieces of Romeo and Juliet, they even draw pictures, etc. And they
passionately discussed because it is, let's say, such a fruitful soil for comparing cultural identities of etc., etc. But after that, let's say those unreading, let's say, pupils, they continued commenting and making reference, let's say, to this literary text, so that not only they discussed in a dialogical and very creative and intercultural way, but really they were put on the way of reading.
I'm afraid
Yeah?
that we are running out of time because we have to finish our roundtable a little bit earlier. So I think that we don't have any more time.
Okay,
Okay?
I can stop here. Okay.
Thank you very much. It's a pity that we can't have all these details, but we are really with the time. We're not so good to the time. So we'll go directly to the next speaker. So Farzan Islam is co-founder of and current executive director of Active Citizen Europe in Belgium, working on European Commission funded Horizon 2020 projects, IMMERSE, as well as New ABC, that focus on the social and educational integration of migrant and refugee children. She has a broad range of experience in the civil society and non-profit sectors across 4 continents, working to advocate for those in challenging circumstances and engaging multiple stakeholders in inclusive and participatory dialogue. She's also a passionate educator and has various times taught courses and delivered guest speeches on cultural awareness and inclusion. Farzana, the floor is yours for a little less than 12 minutes.
I was told 5 minutes, but okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. I know it's been a very long afternoon, so I can condense my bit. I'm very pleased to have been working with this IMMERSE project because it has been a fantastic opportunity to really involve children in our actual research and our actual policy formulation. So I think I'm going to try and bring this quickly full circle back to IMMERSE, to this topic of co-creation. A lot of my colleagues have mentioned it throughout the afternoon, so you're very well aware now of the different kinds of activities that are involved, the different groups, so I'll just go through it very, very quickly to give you an idea of what we did on this project. So the overview is that the objectives of this whole co-creation process, there's 3 key ones. I'm going to read them because it's late and I don't remember. So to develop policy recommendations based on our qualitative and quantitative results, as well as the best practices that have been garnered through, our hub, other professionals that were mentioned previously by colleagues, to include children's voices in the whole process, and finally, to maximize this process of co-creation. It's important to mention that throughout the whole process, especially as Shirley had mentioned with CPAC, for example, co-creation has a lot to do with involving children and really listening to their voices throughout an entire process. So there's nothing that's top down. It's really a sort of trickle up endeavor on our parts. To the extent that we could, we've also co-created with others in the community. So although children's voices were really paramount, obviously, as the research question is about children's integration, we involved as much as possible their communities, the communities around them. So, friends, siblings, parents, teachers, heads of school, sometimes after-school workers, sometimes social workers. So we've really had a chance to interact and engage with a whole stream of experiences and thoughts on what are directly impactful for the children that we are working with. The key thing with co-creation with children, however, still remains children's voices, and that should be the key takeaway for the IMMERSE project. We have worked really hard to incorporate children's voices so that even the indicators that we used in our surveys of those, nearly 30,000 students were were basically harvested from information with focus groups and the like from children themselves in the earlier stages. So it's been a very feedback loop type of process with children. Some of the values that we have kept really front and foremost as facilitators of this co-creation process are in the stars above, but it basically has to do with keeping a very open mind and an open space for children to really speak, to feel they can speak sincerely and honestly. Sometimes there are challenges, teachers are present or whatever, but the whole process was geared that way. Okay, so in total, for this consultation that we did for our policy recommendations in the 6 countries that we did our research on, we had approximately 250 children that we worked with. That's very distracting, Shirley. Okay, 2 minutes. 250 children who fed back directly into this finally consultative process. Each of the partners who did the research in the 6 countries designed their own activities. It was based on the students they had access to, the composition of the groups, the amount of time available, etc. It included a range of activities that were essentially interactive. So there were focus groups, there were informal discussions, brainstorming, all kinds of things. And we'll run through the next 5 slides, I think, that just have a few photographs of different activities in progress, and all of the details about the kind of activities that specifically were done. Please consult the IMMERSE website if you'd like to hear more about it. You can just go through those. So it's brainstorming, ideas. Yeah. Okay. Finally, I'll just mention a word about our experience here in Belgium, because we also did one of the processes for consultation, and we worked with an OCAN class. So OCAN is in the Dutch education system, it's the language immersion class for newcomers. So we worked just with migrant background children. And our findings were very reassuring, really, because although we had difficulty getting schools involved in the project because, COVID, overall there was a very overwhelming interest and support from the heads of school down to the students to have this kind of process available. And so where we were able to exploit the opportunities, we found that teachers and students were extremely open to creating this space where dialogue was possible, where brainstorming was possible, where dissenting voices or opinions could be safely expressed. It was really a very telling experience, and the takeaway is that children really deeply appreciate having the opportunity to express their selves, to express their needs, to not be dictated to, but to be able to really speak their minds and have us take on board, with the importance that it merits, what they say. Final slide, please, I think. So a few examples of the policy recommendations that we sort of harvested from these consultations across the countries. There's sort of 6 main key areas, although there were obviously many, many more, specific ones. These are just examples, and I don't think I need to read them. They're on the slide. But the important thing here is that all of the partners in IMMERSE who did the consultation with these migrant children took these findings and fed them into our national policy papers. So all of the countries have written these national policy papers, including us for Belgium, for example. And all of these recommendations will also feed into EU policy recommendations. So to conclude, the children who were told, when we explained what this was all in aid of and what we would do with their responses. They were told that we would be actually taking it to the Commission and the Parliament and the Council and whoever would be reading it, and there would be a lot of people. The children were really proud to know that their voices could be carried. And it was an eye-opening experience for them, and hopefully it will also open for them possibilities of civic engagement down the future. But this is a fantastic place to be starting, so that should be a takeaway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Farzana. So next speaker, Adam Ghani, is a migration expert who works for Save the Children in Sweden. As a refugee from Syria, he started a movement to train refugees to lead community activities and initiated the support group network, the first refugee-led organization in Sweden. He's also a member of the EU Commission expert group on migration, asylum and integration. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think I will talk about co-creation from migrant perspective, and I don't need to advocate co-creation. I think all my colleagues talk about the importance of co-creation. But I will talk from personal experience from my kids, for example, when he have difficulties eating vegetables, but he have no problems eating from the garden, that we plant in our house, that he helped to plant. He feel that he owned that these vegetables, and he will eat all of them. So I mean, and also I will refer to, I think, Gandhi, who said that if you do things for me without me, you do it against me. So we have to always remember that co-creation is not something that we give to the target group. This is not something that we offer. I will link that also to the European Commission Action Plan on Integration that launched in 2021 until 2026, where we have two elements on education linked to our project to refugee-ed. The first element, it's that how we can equip our classrooms in Europe to become more multicultural, multilingual, how we can equip our teachers with tools to make sure that we have an equity in education for all the children, native or migrant, in classrooms. In the same time, the second element of this integration plan, action plan on integration, talk about participation, the importance of involving the migrant community, the importance of involving the children and their parents, in any process. In education is not an exception. In all integration processes, we need to make sure that co-creation is a fact when we do any action, because it's, as we heard today, integration is not a one-way road, it's a tango, take two, so we have to make sure that is involved. But here also I want to highlight that when we talk about co-creation, often we put ourselves always as an experts, and I think here where we fail when we discuss integration, and we had that a lot in our project in refugee-ed, making sure that when we co-create with families, with children, for example, when you have to set not only the principles that you put in your last slide is exactly what we always try to advocate for, plus that we need to make sure that the families, the children, or any kind of target group that we co-creating with, they have the same level of understanding of what we're doing, because they're gonna have more responsibility. That means that we have to provide them with the right information, tools, and resources to be an equal. We have also to understand that always, and this is what we did in refugee-ed, for example, when parents, for example, realized that co-creation is not only about listening to them, to their problems. When they realize the moment they realize that it's not we're asking what is your problem, directly they start to talk about problems and solutions. They start to present, even when we did the first stage of the project, where we're doing like barriers, they were telling us their problems, communicating with schools, their children not being able to fit, belonging. They were suggesting directly solutions because they have thought about it. They are the experts. We as professionals, we are facilitators of these action. They are the experts. They are the most near to a problem, and they know what works and what doesn't work. So we have to, always take in account that when do co-creations, to make sure that we treat them as experts, make sure that they are part of the process from the start, from the planning to the implementation, ending with evaluation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You said it all. So I will give the floor to Michaela Lonardi. So to conclude for 2 minutes, I think.
One slide.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you for this space. I had the opportunity to conclude the first panel, but in this case, the third panel, and close today's intervention. I would like to show you only just the last slide with the policy recommendation that we address to EU institutions and the school sectors. So go ahead. Ahead. Okay. There is no time for this, but all this information are available in the EU policy paper that it's available on our website. So it has been published recently. So what I would like to share in this last 1 minute of this panel, and I think it's also in line with what we shared during the whole presentation, and our colleagues also from our refugee team, is that we need at EU level a common model of inclusion based on a child-centered inclusive approach, where cultural diversity is considered a resource that can benefit all the communities. Of course, data are fundamental. We, as IMMERSE team, stress the importance of having an harmonized data collection system across all countries, because data are fundamental to formulate policies that can work and be effective once applied and implemented. They can effectively change the life of migrant background children. In order to be effective, it's important that we recommend to all EU institutions and member states to guarantee the right to education to all migrant background children. And this means guaranteeing them the access to high quality education, immediate access to legal documents, immediate enrollment in schools, as well as having opportunity to socialize with peers, to access language courses and also professional training. It's important to implement the action plan on integration and inclusion, already mentioned by my colleague from Save the Children Sweden. And we also ask for specific plan for the integration of migrant background children that take into consideration the different groups of migrant background children, from refugees to asylum seekers to unaccompanied minors and so on. Of course, all policies should be based on the principle of the best interest of the child, and their participation should be guaranteed in all decision-making processes that affect their lives, as also enshrined the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So this is the conclusion for now. I ran the thank you.
Thank you very much. We could summarize that actually co-creation is not a methodology is a paradigm. So I think that this reflects the reality. So thank you very much. We don't know if we'll have the time for the video from Cork University. Do we have the
So thank you again to all the speakers. Now we are approaching the end of the event. Dr. Emilia Aiello, KMC Chair of refugee-ED Project, will share some concluding remarks. Emilia Aiello Cabrera is Ramón y Cajal Research Fellow at the Department of Sociology at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. Between 2019 and 2022, she was EU Marie Curie Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School of Government and Universidad Autónoma de Barcelona.
Thank you, Maria.
Well, more than concluding remarks, I just say congratulations to all of you. Congratulations, Mercedes. Congratulations, Teresa, for the excellent work that we have all done during these 3 long years. If there are like 3 takeaways, I think that the first is that we need science. Yes, we have shown and we have seen that there's no need to reinvent the wheel. We have science, we have evidence, we have the refugee brokering knowledge platforms. We also have the IMMERSE dashboard. It's an incredible tool in which, with very sounded methodologies, we have already shown how the successful educational actions and other actions in the field of mental health and psychosocial support are being effective in contributing to the socio-educational integration of refugee children and refugee migrants. Also, the second takeaway is just the need for co-creation. We know that we need to do what we are doing today, work together, work researchers, policymakers, stakeholders from NGOs, families, and of course, children. And third, fundamental rights. We know that education is a fundamental right that cannot be neglected. And as the MEP, Juan Fernando López Aguilar said, if there is a will, there is a way. So congratulations to all of us, and let's continue the conversation outside. Good afternoon.